Hello, Steamies, and welcome back to the Ginger Engine. Now, you'll notice something, well, a couple of things that are a bit different. One, I have a cap on. Long story short, I've been suffering some mental health issues, and it affects my physical health and my skin conditions, like in my head. So I've had to put the hat on because the last thing you want to see is a weird, balding ginger guy. And you may also notice the more exciting thing is that we have some guests on creators from the Thomas fandom that I really admire and whose opinions that I respect. And I thought it's a new era with CGI, so let's start a new era with Ginger Engine, and we can get some of the movies reviewed with either fellow Thomas fans or complete newbies. So let's start with two of my favorite people in the fandom: Thomas Lawrence from the Thomas Reborn series, and Jack Cunningham, otherwise known as Little Owl VA. Gentlemen, a pleasure as always.
Hello.
I didn't know who was going to speak first. If me or Thomas was going to go first. So
yeah, I was tempted to go, Jack, Thomas's mic is muted. Say something.
This.
But that's the power of editing, my friend. If there's a gap, I know what to do with it.
Yeah.
But first of all, thank you both for coming on. Like, we all know what it's like trying to get, members of the fandom to actually come on and, camera facing, so they actually see, the faces and stuff. So first of all, I really appreciate that. And also just for agreeing to come on to the channel, because I've reviewed the Thomas Reborn series, and I've reviewed Jack's Little Owl channel as well, especially the Godred psychological thriller.
More coming, by the way. More coming.
Yes. Well, we will be doing some teases and plugs at the end as well for you as well to get you some more stuff. Because
I just had to point out, hey, I was doing that for you, okay? Because I know you enjoyed that.
Oh, I really did, yeah. And the other stuff that you're coming up with, obviously I will not reveal because that is not my privilege and not my story to tell. But you have obviously sent some stuff, some ideas, and they're absolutely fantastic. I do love how you take an idea and you just go, right, I'm going to go down this rabbit hole and see how dark I can go. And that's what I love. That's essentially what the Gunvar Edwards type of style was in the Railway series books. So I just love that kind of Machiavellian-esque style. And Thomas, with yours as well, with your Reborn series, you're capturing the essence of the classic Thomas, but also adding in those little bit of mature, darker twists as well, which obviously I talked about in both of your reviews. Feel free to check them out on the channel, and also give the guys a like and a sub because they thoroughly deserve it.
One of the things I remember, I just find hilarious is now I feel like in this group, because obviously you're part of the Reborn community. It's honestly, I feel like this kind of the token emo dark-minded person, because it was just the idea I remember distinctly in the review. I laughed so hard when he said, Jack, did you design sleases? Because that was bloody nightmare fuel.
Yes. Well, I did use a word that was a bit more darker than bloody because I had to get the censor button on to make sure I didn't get demonetized.
I was being considerate.
But yes, it was just that kind of jump scare of it. I was like, whoa.
It's like the idea of me being the token Tim Burton of the Thomas Reborn community.
I was going to say, that being said, that shot was literally I thought, right, do I? Yes, I'm putting that in.
Yeah, I was not expecting
because he knows I hate jump scare.
Yes, I hate jump scares too.
We hate jump scares.
Yeah. Well, and I was just sitting nice. Well, was the premiere, and I'm just sitting back enjoying it. I'm like, oh, this is really good. I'm really enjoying it. And also I was like, what the? I was and my kids were like, what, Daddy, what's wrong? And I'm like, nothing. It's all right. Go back to your tablets. I'm like, I don't want my 5-year-olds to know that I got the crap scared out of me by Thomas creation. But in fairness, if you watch any of the Thomas episodes from the classic series, you know it was terrifying. Also, one of the reasons that I wanted to try and get you guys on for this one, particularly for Hero of the Rails, was we've established on my channel, I was not in the fandom at this point. This was the whole kind of thing where it was society pressure. I was out with the fandom. I got bullied a lot for liking Thomas, and it was just a kind of, retreat and revert kind of thing. So I only got to see it now as an older fan, so I'm looking at it with an adult lens. Whereas with yourselves, you kind of grew up more with the Thomas ilk. You would have been around when the movies were coming out for the premieres and stuff, so you've got both insights of what it was like when you were younger watching it, and also now as content creators in the Thomas fan community. First thing that I'll ask for Jack for this one was how old were you when Hero of the Rails came out? Because it was 2009, I believe.
Yeah, I think I may have saw it in 2010, so a year after. But I think in terms of when it came out, I was 6.
What about yourself, Thomas?
I think I was, if I'm right. I think I might have actually been either 8 or 9 when it came out. Yeah, September. I was 8. I was 9.
Yeah. Well, in fairness, like, I was born 1987, so make of what you will when how old I was when it came out. Well, so I was really just kind of rekindling my love of Thomas, and it was getting back into the classic era railway series, all that kind of stuff. And
like, is this kind of the period where you were starting to rekindle, where you were starting to kind of get back into it a little bit more?
Yeah, it was
when the social pressure didn't hit you as much.
Yeah, it was my 21st birthday, so it was 2008. My girlfriend at the time had got me a Hornby Thomas train set. What and because I was like, yeah, and it's not been out of the box at all. What it's just it's mint in condition. Thomas has seen my collection, what, and it's only grown since then. What so what so
you know what they say, a way to a man's heart, a way to a man's heart is a Hornby is a model train. So
yeah, exactly.
Keep that in mind, girls, if you're watching.
Definitely. So well, it wasn't hard because what we split up and I'm now with my wife and I'm very, very happily married. That's another story. Yeah. But for my 21st, because I was a Thomas fan as a kid, I was like, right, let's have a Thomas themed party. So we had that. So we got I got like Thomas cake, got Thomas banners, everything, like the whole shebang. Some of the pictures, my mates are like, what the is this guy smoking? What? Because it was all this stuff and we had like the Thomas music playing in the background and all that kind of stuff, and the classic series on in the background. So they were all like, Andrew, what are you smoking, mate? Were you drinking before you got us down here? And I'm like, it's 10 in the morning, so yes.
Oh my.
Yeah,
I was fair enough. Yes.
Yeah. It was my 21st, so here it is. But yeah, so we had this big party, and it was a brilliant time. I just thought, oh, it's just something that's a gag, it's a bit funny, and then he's just going back to type it. No, the fire, the fire.
That deserves a clap. That deserves a clap.
Thank you. Well, the fire had came back, but at that point, I was like, right, I want to get back into it. So I looked at so I got like the DVDs, and I got I already had the Railway series books and stuff, and then got them, kind of went and do collections and all that kind of stuff, and started rekindling my love for it again. But I felt like the CGI era, I thought, well, if I'm trying to jump into it now, I think maybe that's passed me by. And I still wasn't confident about going, yeah, guys, I still like Thomas, deal with it, kind of thing. So I'd missed that boat, and I thought when I was starting the Thomas channel, I thought, well, let's get back into it. But I've only got up to season 12. That's about as far as I'll be able to go. I don't have any DVDs. And then one of the fandom very generously sent me money and went, use this money to get the rest of the DVDs. And I was like, wow, well, thank you so much. He was like, but you've got to review them all, right? And I'm like, well, I kind of have to now. You blackmailed me with money. I thought we got to season 12 and I was like, right, Hero. Oh yes, those glasses are absolutely brilliant. The fact he's got the Friends t-shirt on as well, that's proper 90s retro. We are all this. But yeah, so I thought if I'm gonna do
I'm gonna keep this on, by the way. I'm gonna keep this on for the whole review.
Definitely. You should. You definitely should. It's like the only time I have to wear my sunglasses is if I've got like a scratch in my eye that kind of opens up every now and then if I'm on the computer too much. So I get that on and I'm just look like like an albino. But yeah, so I thought, well, if I'm gonna
doing a Sleezes cosplay.
Yes. We'll just get the Captain America meme. I understood that reference. I thought if we were going to do this, I was going to go all in. We'll get guests on. We'll talk about it, what we liked, what we didn't like. There's only so many times they can just listen to just one random ginger guy going, what the heck has happened to Thomas? Since we have the namesake on, we will start with Thomas Lawrence. What did you think of this movie? Either A, when it first came out when you were younger, or what do you think of it now as a Thomas content creator?
I think when it first came out, I was like, because they actually released this in cinema when this first came out for me in 2009. So I thought this was around the time when I was starting to be like, right, they're changing it, starting to leave my sort of heart run, let's say. So I thought, heck, I'll see the movie and then that's it. Then I'm done. So this was kind of like my bon voyage to Thomas. So I went to see this in cinema, and I was a bit thinged about being CGI because I grew up the model, so I love the models in general. So it was I was like, right, okay, what are they going to do to make this interesting CGI? Very intuitive for a 9-year-old, but I like to question things. I question things all the time. So,
and I think that's something that's quite common in the Thomas fan community is that we're all And I say this in a nice sort of way, not calling any other fandoms dumbasses, but we're very highly intelligent when it comes to like, this type of thing. And we do question a lot of things at a younger age. By the time this recording has already come out, like we just dropped The Missing Coach on my channel. And I watched that also when it first came out, like I was baby. Well, but once I got older, like about 5 or 6, there were things that didn't sit right with me. Like I was like, why is the Fat Controller being so mean to Douglas? Because he's done nothing wrong. What's the reason behind it? But also the Missing Coach was missing from that run. So we didn't have that kind of backstory as to why he thinks Douglas is a prick. And it wasn't until I got the really serious books, I was like, I always knew there was something up. There was something that wasn't right. And it kind of highlighted it for me. So I can kind of understand that. I'm kind of going to say goodbye to this. This is my swan song for it because we're going into full CGI, but we're in the model era. So I can understand the logic behind it. But what did you think when you started watching it in the cinema?
I thought, like, because the last 2 specials, obviously, I'd just begun with just the bog standard intro. I thought, okay, they're probably going to do it that way, but just with the CGI. But the fact they actually gave them now a proper sort of movie introduction, I was like, okay, I see what they're doing here. But story, little bit slow burner for me at the start. However, once we actually started getting into the whole Thomas and Spencer part of the story, but then into Thomas finding Hero, I was like, okay, this is actually not so bad. Like, because obviously, because I've seen the Great Discovery the year before, it was like, I was a bit like, okay, how is this going to beat last year's movie? But
I was very glad that I was able to get to watch The Great Discovery when it came out because my cousin was toddler age, and he had kind of preliminarily taken up that mantle. So I thought, as a loving and respecting cousin who wants to make sure that he gets the best for his cousin, I will come down and babysit him and watch this with him. And the fact I was like, wait, hold on, this is James Bond that's narrating this. Okay, I'm just in it for me now. You go play with your blocks, whatever. Bye. So that was the kind of way that I went for it. And it's interesting that you mentioned the voice acting as well in it. This was the first one where it had for our audience like a full voice cast. So I'll take this one to Jack because he is, does his VA channel. He's all about his voice acting stuff. How did you find it when it goes from being, strictly narration type of stories to narration with a full voice cast?
I was taking my sunglasses off because I didn't want to distract Thomas, but I
just thought you were going Top Gun there, like, okay, yeah, game time.
I gotta cut loose. But basically, I think that format really works because I think the best example of where it does work, for me, is Tugs, where it uses the narration to set the scene, set the atmosphere, set the tone. And I'm gonna be honest, and I'm gonna be repeating what a lot of people said. But it's very much overused, the whole narration thing. It's very, very overused. And I think the biggest issue is kind of and I can't really blame them too much for it because it's a transitional phase away from. I'm much more critical of season 12 than I am like the actual experiment because that had a similar problem. But the actual, it works more. Here I can kind of forgive them more because like this is the first time they're trying new voice actors. This is the first time they're trying with this format, and it's obvious, and they still haven't found the rhythm with it yet. So I'm slightly lenient towards it, but it's a huge thing that you need to iron out effectively. It's huge.
I think the thing with that is as well is like they were considering with the original because like obviously 2020 was the year where we found out loads of details from behind the scenes of Thomas. And like apparently for this film it was actually going to be the same format as what they did in season 12 where it was half model half CGI. But then they like abandoned that because they were like, oh heck, it's going to save us money if we go the whole hog. But the one thing I will say that was quite interesting with this film is the fact that I found out that it wasn't actually maybe Thomas who was the lead in this. It was maybe Stanley. I would have liked to have seen that as a film because like Stanley was just very underwritten out of the whole everyone who came around that time.
I wouldn't even say he was underwritten. I think he was just I think he was they were preparing this character for so much more, and they just sort of didn't really write him in because I think Thomas was more marketable. And so it was like it's really difficult to I can understand kind of like the thought process is interesting and it makes for like interesting fan analysis and backstory, of course, which is what we're here for. But I think I can understand that like I think they got willing to go with stuff with Stanley, but instead of he just faded to the background because Thomas was ultimately more marketable, I think.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah. Well, and it would have been interesting to have Stanley as the lead, but my thing would have been Pierce Brosnan has to narrate Stanley, pay him whatever he's due, because at that point they'd cut the ties with him, and he was meant to
I mean,
do
they could have got him
seasons.
back to the film at
Yeah.
Just
least.
get him to do the voice.
That's what I was saying. Like, just get him back, just to be Stanley, and have him as the lead character. Well, they'd cut ties in the other ways, but I would have been like, pay the guy what he's due.
Thing is, though, that's like a lot of the celebrities who have done Thomas, though. Like, is like what everyone will probably notice as we go through, as probably when you go through all these movie reviews, like there's a lot of celebrity castings as certain characters, but then those actors don't return to do the voices, and they're just taken over by someone new they can get into do more regular.
I think there's also a Hollywood stigma with doing Thomas. I think more in terms of the impact Magic Railroad had, and because that's kind of left them, especially because this was still the 2000s that was going on here. So it was like, I think, and as it kind of went into its good eras, like obviously you had John Hurt and Eddie Redmayne in later films. That was kind of 2010s. So it did sort of go away. But I think during this time, it was clear that Thomas was not the same show. And there was especially, and I think from Magic Railroad onwards, there was that Hollywood stigma of being a part of kind of like, it's similar to how in the 70s and 80s, like superhero movies used to be considered box office kryptonite. Like what I mean by this is they were like considered really risky films to make because of like the camp behind. I don't know the full details behind it, but a lot of people that I remember Nostalgia Critic talking about this. It's really the superhero movies were really so it's a similar conundrum to this kind of when you put Thomas or like talking trains or like talking vehicles and stuff like that. There's a real, especially, and like Cars came around this time that was successful, obviously, especially from merchandise standpoint, but commercially and like critically, it wasn't as successful. So there was a real stigma behind these kind of properties at this time, I think, and people just didn't really want to be associated with them. I'm making an assumption here, but from like I have a educated assumption is what I'm saying from like what I can see of the time period and that kind of thing. So that's kind of one reason I'm thinking there was a kind of a lack of celebrity presence during this time.
Well, and I can agree with that. And because there's only so much that a legacy can essentially hold up a franchise when it's in its darkest days. Because they could lead into the fact of they had Ringo Starr, Alec Baldwin, Michael Angelis was a big name at the time, George Carlin. But when the franchise is on its arse, which it was at this point, especially after season 12, there's only so much that clout could take, and especially after what happened with Pierce Brosnan, because it looked like, they got Brosnan in, but it turned out to be
what did happen actually. I don't realize
there's a lot of theories around it. I personally think it was financial. I think 2008 was when
it makes most sense.
2008 was the big financial crash. Everybody was like scrambling just to try and keep their jobs. And I think for the type of salary that an actor like Brosnan, who rightfully so should have that because he had earned it, would be demanding for, it was meant to be, I think, 3 seasons and another couple of movies. So it would have taken him through Hero of the Rails and Misty Island Rescue. So in a way, I think he dodged a bullet.
That being said, however, I think with Brosnan doing his
he should have kept him in. We could have had a nice wee cameo there. Oh, is that your was it your
that was my mother?
Your mum?
That was my mother.
I was gonna say. That being said,
we're keeping that in though, by the way, Wax. But officially, hello, Jack's mum.
I'm gonna tell her that afterwards now.
Yeah. She's officially she has become the cameo of our Thomas fandom.
She's made her YouTube debut, and it's not on my channel.
Why do I feel like that's gonna just become a meme? That's just gonna become a meme now. Just like
only you would make a meme out of that.
Don't worry, I'll just get it and clip it, and then anyway, right, I'll just
that's funny.
You guys,
that's funny.
You can just make a meme. It was just the way you done it. It was
just
yeah.
Well, so please apologize to your mother for me for that one.
That's fine. I apologize. I'm not gonna lie. Also, if because you couldn't see it from the camera, her face just genuinely literally wide-eyed with terror as she kind of realized I interrupted her recording.
That was literally 2 seconds, but for her it would have felt like 5 minutes. So when it comes back to obviously like the voice actors themselves, like when they got like actors such as Togo Wegawa to voice Hero, I felt when I was watching this that there was a very unexpected emotional weight that he brought with this, just from the voice performance alone. Like, don't get me wrong, the rest of the cast were doing a stellar job, but it felt like everything elevated when Hero came on and you heard that voice. It was just, wow, it was as smooth as a knife cutting through butter. It was just fun. It was just beautiful.
I felt like that I felt like I was watching a Studio Ghibli movie, to be honest.
Yes.
Because I know we talked about the pacing and the narration, but the actual voice acting itself in this was superb. I'm not even joking. I loved the voice acting in this. It's like each character, specifically, of course, there's some of the writing lets it down, but the voice acting itself, even like Angelus himself, so much energy, so much. Only Angelus, sorry, Michael Brandon, but just even him. There's just so much passion, so much character, and all these voices. I look at the characters and I listen to the voice and I was like, it makes so much sense, because this is something I've always wanted to see since I was a child, is what these characters would sound like if they had their own voices and not from narrators effectively. So like, because it was always obvious it was the same person voicing the same characters over and over. So seeing that was always something I always wanted to see the show go into. And they did it beautifully here, especially like I said with Hero. There's a real kind of soothing, it almost becomes a different movie when Hero's on screen, and just the voice, a lot of that kind of is because of the voice and just the tone that he speaks in. It feels like a completely different movie, almost slows it down, but not to the point where the slower pace is a fault, to the point where it slows it down and it basically relaxes the viewer. It becomes you're encapsulated in the world more.
Yeah,
and
there's a difference between
slower.
like the slow of, oh my god, this is dragging, and the slow of, you're now engaged with the story.
Yes.
And that was what Igawa brought to it with Hero. And also, I forget the voice actor's name, it escapes me now, but who voiced Victor. I absolutely loved his voice as well. I know it changes throughout the seasons, like, and I'm more equated to the Brenner era's interpretation, which I do love as well. But it was just something, it was just so ironic to me that the Indians who were not of Sodor or British descent were the ones that everybody seemed to rave about. It was like, even like they're like, oh, we love Igawa as Hero, we loved Victor's voice actor. Oh, wait, Thomas, yeah, it was fine. It just felt like that. It was like, what about Percy? I'm not a big fan. And
he is all right.
If you want to compare voice actors, let's compare how much better these guys actually were to the voices we actually ended up having for the main lot in Magic Railroad.
Oh,
that's good. Actually, that's good.
That would be a good, like, you know how you get like those kind of things like movie fights and stuff where people will debate over which movie's better.
Yeah.
But
like the Watch Mojo series.
Like Watch Mojo, and when Screen Junkies used to do it back in the day, the movie fights. But we should do something like that. But it's like comparing the voice actors of Magic Railroad to Hero of the Rails. And having like round one, what Thomas Free Thomas
tone. And
then just having like these random ones just pop in as well. But when it comes to like, you know, like the voice acting as well, and with Agawa again, I'm coming back to the way that he told Hero's backstory, so beautiful. And the change in style, because it was going from CGI animation to the more 2D-esque kind of way that he was performing. It was like you were taken to a totally different movie just for that little bit of time, but it didn't feel like it was jarring or like a bad way. This makes me wish that this was the 2D style that a certain We Don't Talk About reboot was actually in. But again, we do have what we have, but I just felt like when they experimented with the different tones and different ways of structuring the film, it landed a lot more than I was expecting. And it didn't feel jarring when I was coming back to it. So let's talk about the villain of this movie, which surprisingly, at this point in the franchise, was not a diesel or any form of diesel engine. It was actually a steam engine that was the main antagonist, which was, of course, Spencer. Now, some people like from what I'd gathered back then, thought that was a bold choice. I say that as in like they didn't like it. But as times went on, they've appreciated the fact that it was something different. But so what did you guys think of that?
I think personally, like, I thought that was a good move, actually, to be fair, when I first watched this, because I thought not every steam engine is nice, essentially, or just it's not just friends of Thomas or the actual railway itself. So I thought this was actually a kind of a good move to basically show just because they're a steam engine doesn't mean they can't be a S head, essentially.
Yeah, I know, a nice engine.
Yeah.
One thing I will say, I'm glad they set Spencer up beforehand. It's kind of like, of course, he wasn't as malicious as he was here, but he's kind of like, he was set up as a kind of more abrasive Gordon, and kind of as in his like in his debut, and then he just became more antagonistic in Edward the Grey. And I think he was really kind of, and I think giving him that kind of making, because he's still like he's still got an animated persona that makes him worthy of a villain, with the kind of the accents, the snootiness, like, and the actual so I think it's really good that they set him up and actually kept building on his character. And I think the choice to add Steamy, kind of a steam engine as a villain, and like you said, lack of diesels like anywhere in this movie, I think this leaves real potential, which they didn't back up on, unfortunately, for a hidden lore in CGI. I think like it starts off because it's like a kind of pre-Diesel's era. Like I can imagine this movie taking place in like 1950, 1945 or something like that, as kind of like a post-war, like something like that. Like maybe the story could be that Hero was abandoned during the Second World War. Like there's so much potential which they didn't ride off as. And I think it leaves some fan potential, obviously. And I think it really adds kind of it kind of really shows a missed opportunity by Miller to kind of create lore. The fact that it's a complete ensemble of steam engines. I think it really adds to a sense of lore.
Yeah. Well, let's talk about the lore actually, because we all follow, like, you know, essentially our creator god, which is the unlucky Tug. Like I do love him, but I do think he's slightly overrated. But that is another story for another day. But what I do like when I watch these movie reviews was that he treats, you know, the CGI series as just a completely separate timeline. He's just like, right, the model era was its thing. That's got its own kind of history. Railway series has got its own history. CGI is its own beast. Let's just, like, you know, it's essentially kind of start from scratch. And the way that he interpreted that was because Hero was saying he was the first engine on Sodor. And I'm like, I'm gone the coffee pot. Anyway. Yeah. So what do you guys think of it? Like, do you think that is a valid theory, that this is a completely like fresh start? So if we were doing like reviews of it, for example, in the later seasons, we shouldn't be comparing it to the classic and hit era. Well, it should be treated as its own beast. What are your thoughts on it?
I think it's starting a fresh slate, kind of. But the thing is, at the same time, it's like if you throughout seasons 13, maybe through 16, 17, they still referenced a lot of events that happened pre the CGI era, and also like maybe even refer to locations pre CGI era. So I think at the same time it is a new slate, because they're obviously starting like introducing new things and obviously giving us more brand new primary locations rather than stuff we've grown to love. But at the same time, it's like it's not really creating a new slate. It's literally just like it just feels more like they're just adding stuff just so if you hadn't watched Thomas in the Gone years just before, like if you'd only started on this, I think they were trying to do it so you could basically start from here and not have to go back and rewatch every single episode or read every single book. So I think that's how they were trying to do it. But at the same time, I don't think it is really them starting a new slate of history. They are starting a new slate of history by doing it CGI, but also giving the CGI its own starting point. But I don't think it's like a fresh history for the whole of the series itself.
I think the problem with creating a whole new thing is that it's still season 13 is the thing. It's not being marketed as like, oh, new generation of Thomas. No, this is carrying on from 12 other seasons. Those other seasons included the classic series lore. So I think that's the main issue. Because and at the same time, All Engines Go is still being marketed as season 25 for some godforsaken
bizarre
reason.
reason.
Yeah.
Yeah, it just doesn't make sense. Like, I think that's why it doesn't work, is because of how, if it was doing the Hasbro thing, for example, if it marketed it as different generations, or like as like treating their main like properties, Transformers and MLP, if Mattel did that with Thomas, as kind of marketed it as separate generations, then there would be less flack on that. But I think since this is being marketed as season 13 is the real issue, I think.
Yeah. And it's even like now we are in an age of where multiverses are now a thing. Well, practically everybody and their granddad has some sort of multiverse or cinematic universe or all this kind of stuff. They're all verses. So could you maybe say that it was more a case of maybe it's a multiverse kind of angle? What with this, instead of it being like its own separate timeline, it's just there was a point, like for example, Hero being the first engine on Sodor in this canon is where the split has kind of occurred, and that's how it's went off in its own little multiverse.
That's a very today perception on it, I will say. It's kind of like back then, even like 2009, they didn't obviously have this kind of
they
didn't
back
have
in 2009 it was all reboots, prequels, sequels, all that kind of stuff.
Well, I'm gonna be honest, this makes me way too excited, because this makes me way too excited to the multiverse story, because that means that somewhere there's a Thomas style done in like the Aardman style, or like done in anime style. That makes me like the Star Wars. What's the Star Wars thing on Disney Plus? Like, where it does it in all those different styles.
There's the Clone Wars, and there's and there was Rebels.
No. There's like an actual
but then
series.
There's also it's like more kind of it's like the anime kind of styles as well. Is it? I want to say Jedi Knights, but I know it's not
like
that.
Legacy or something like
something
that.
like that, yeah. But I know the one that you mean. But it's a similar kind of thing.
It's on Disney Plus, and it's like I just love that idea of kind of like that makes me kind of I think that opens a few doors for like fandoms of a kind of like if anybody wants to kind of anybody out there want to create like Thomas in an Aardman or like or like obviously we've seen like Lego styles and like other styles. I think creativity is your bounds. Like I personally would love to do a reaction of that if any of you wanted to get out there and do it.
Yeah.
If they done Thomas in an Aardman style, do it like where Thomas maybe meets Wallace and Gromit or something like that.
Yeah. I would just love it to be like, someone does a Sodor What If series.
Yes.
Where they just pick points like either from the Railway series canon or like from classic era canon and go, what would have happened if, like, for example, Smudger wasn't turned into a generator.
I mean,
what that with just all these different things. I mean, that's essentially what fandom do.
You're probably gonna have to cut that out. I'm just saying, because 3 writers here. You're probably gonna have to cut that out. We're gonna have to keep that to ourselves.
You were just like, well, we didn't say anything.
No, it's a case of like these things I usually do keep in because people will look at things and go, it's interesting. It's not a case of like they're stealing ideas, they're just opening to interpretation.
Enough, Well,
that's essentially what every era of Thomas has done.
True.
Like Sharon Miller, Andrew Brenner, like the classic eras, the hit era, they all took what was there and put their own little twist on it. And this was exactly what Hero of the Rails was doing. It was like, okay, Hero is now the first engine. He was the master of the railway. Now we have Victor and we have the Steamworks, a location that you never saw. We always heard about the works. We didn't know there was a Steamworks or a Dieselworks. And what did you think when you first saw the Steamworks come up in this movie?
A bit of segregation going on there, but no, I'm kidding. But that's one thing I will say about this era is just they like to emphasize the steamies and diesels thing. Like, oh, if you're a diesel, you can't be useful and stuff like that. Like, racist. What?
Yeah.
One thing I will say I don't like about the Steamworks is we don't know specifically where it is. That's my one complaint. It's kind of like, is this a replacement for Crovan's Gate Works, or is this like a completely different? That's one. I get like the TV series didn't really do that as kind of like a sense of like it's like, because it's kind of charming. It leaves kind of places left ambiguous, and also it gives like American audiences more kind of excuse to kind of throw themselves into the lore and kind of feel more involved in it if it's just like someplace separated from it all. But at the same time, Knapford is name dropped.
Yeah.
The summer house is name dropped. These locations are name dropped, and
Yeah.
we only have the Steamworks. Where the bloody hell is the Steamworks?
I think as well though, it's like the Steamworks, whenever the engines have probably even the smallest problem, it's like they go like, okay, you have to go to the Steamworks. I'm like, he's got a scratch in his paintwork. Just get a paint can, paint over it. But like the problem is like the fact is we never heard about the works unless it was Henry's crash in the Flying Kipper, or if it was
Yeah. And
Duck
even then,
going
that
through
was
a
even
barber
that was
shop.
crew. That wasn't like on Sodor. It was he was getting sent to the mainland to get done and then
Because that
come
was
back.
that serious. That's the point.
Yeah.
Shit. There was like
but with like you say, with the other ones, like you know, the Runaway, it was Edward must take you to the works. Like,
I was literally
there
about to reference that one as well.
Great minds.
Duck with a barber shop. Literally just got sent to the works as well to get
You're a
mended
psychic.
and repainted.
And I think those have generally been accepted as Croven's Gate works, because we did actually see the works in the CGI in the hits model era. To be fair, we saw like a workshop that they went to.
Did Croven's Gate ever get like toy manufactured more than anything else? I never think it actually did.
I don't think it did.
I think it did. I think it did, because there was
something
there was
for
a
the
wooden
fans
railway.
that watch this episode. If you know the answer to this, drop a message in the comments below and let us know if this was a thing. Did Croven's Gate get like its own toy, like a specific name dropped toy?
I think not Croven's Gate. Okay, the name Croven's Gate didn't, but I actually own this toy. It's the wooden railway work shed with like the plastic red doors and the plastic roof, like the actual brick. Like, have none of you ever seen this? Like, I'll send a picture to you, Andrew, so you can put it in the edit. But it's like a two so it's a two rail shed and it goes out each end, and there are two red plastic doors at each end. And it was included in a wooden railway playset. Like, there was a playset around it. So it doesn't name drop Croven's Gate, but it's like literally called the work shed. Like, so that's probably the closest you're gonna get.
Yeah,
probably so. But yeah, that's something that we don't know about.
There was one thing with Hero of the Rails as well. Like, there was like a promotional thing I remember the papers doing for Hero of the Rails, like back when the thing came out, to get people more in the mood to go and see something Thomas related in cinema. They done this thing with The Sun ages ago, like where they used to do like a little mini DVD you'd get, and they'd have 2 episodes on the disc. It'd be like one classic era story and one hit era story. Unfortunately, as you got further into the DVDs, you got a season 12 story included in the hit era ones, but we don't hold that against them. But I think it was like you had episodes like Busy Going Backwards, Percy's Promise. I think the ones that, these are the ones I had. I think I had Busy Going Backwards, Percy's Promise, Edward Trevor and the Really Useful Party, Buzz, Duncan Gets Spooked, and because I was a nerd and I got all 6, and I can't even think now. I think it might have been something like You Can't Win or something, the 4 Little Engines maybe.
Yeah. But that was something I never really knew about those type of things.
I didn't know about that either.
Yeah, it was like 3. It was basically like just many silly things that they do with the paper, and I'd be like, get the newspaper, The Sun today. I don't care if you want the Daily Mail, you're getting The Sun.
I'm just saying, if you need a bank for any kind of obscure, like the most obscure Thomas knowledge, go to Thomas Lawrence, okay? Because he just like honestly, he comes out with the most random things that nobody would ever think about. Like, if ever you need like a bank for that kind of knowledge, go to Thomas. He is the messiah of obscure Thomas knowledge.
It's something that I love about this.
Messiah. I'm just a very naughty
boy. There is something that I genuinely love about this fandom, though, is because there's always something that you find out. Every day really is a school day when it comes to the lores of Thomas and Friends. Well, you check, like, you get your basic ones that you get on like your Thomas wikis and all that kind of stuff, but then you speak to a fan that's maybe out with, and they'll go, "Oh, I remember this," or "Oh, do you not remember having that?" Or "Oh, what did you make of this?" And I'm like, wow, there's so much here that you miss out on.
And it's like that with like most big franchises like this, is kind of the smallest details or the smallest, like, it's like the equivalent of someone selling like I don't know, this one fork that's was used in the Lord of the Rings, perhaps. Like even small details like this, small kind of pictures of newspaper articles promoting something like that are always treated like treasure because they are associated with such a beloved franchise or character. And so that it fascinates me how much a franchise like Thomas the Tank Engine elevates even the most minute details into like I don't know, a full-fledged documentary.
It's also the fact that, like, you'll have something, you'll maybe say something that you think was maybe true back in the day, but maybe memory has not served you correctly, and all of a sudden the fandom is going scatter, find out everything you can about this one thing that someone thinks they might possibly remember from when they were 3, and see if it legitimately exists, and
It's
they
a
will find
scavenger
it
hunt.
within the space of about 24 hours. They'll find it.
They found the sizzle reels of the season 5 crash reels in a bin.
It's
Like I
cra-
remember.
Was that the stuff that got released last year? Like all the season
Yes.
5
Yeah.
reels in a bin.
Yeah, they found it in a bin.
Yeah, it was like how, like, when they found all the like the Tugs models, it would be like a guy had found them all in the skip and just went, "I ain't getting what, you're not getting rid of these. Grab, run."
I'm gonna be honest, Thomas. I'm sounding like a bit of a hypocrite there because oh god like Andrew, you don't know what like the context behind this, but there was once a reaction where so I reacted to the Unlucky Tug's Lost Media episode, and he went on a full like 7 to 10 minute like discussion on Gordon's snowplow, and I was just sitting, and I was literally sitting there thinking nobody cares. It was just so tempting. Like if we were like talking about this. If Unlucky Tug goes to the Audrey extravaganza, you need to do that rant full on in front of his face. And so I just feel like such a hypocrite for saying that because like I was just sitting there as like I've never had sleepless nights in my entire life thinking, oh God, the front of Gordon's snowplow was never seen. I wonder what if that thing was happened. You know what? I'm going to just do a full-on Mission Impossible into Mattel's archives just to find out the truth about that one model. I do not get sleepless nights over Gordon's snowplow.
That being said, though, it was cool. He had like literally every single other engine had a normal snowplow, and then Gordon just comes in like,
yeah. Comparing girlfriends.
I'm not gonna say. I can't say what I wanted. I had a thought in my head, but I can't say it aloud on here because like this channel will lose monetization if I say what I'm thinking on here.
Ginger Media After Dark.
Yeah.
Like Thomas and Percy fighting over who's got the bigger snowplow, and then Gordon just comes alongside with his snowplow, and he's just like,
"Don't."
That's my point.
That's
like,
I think Ginger show discussion.
We'll stop there.
Yeah.
But ladies and gentlemen, if you're old enough and AKA know what we're about, then
they'll understand.
And if you're not a virgin, you'll understand.
Yeah.
Should we get back to the movie? Can I like one thing I would like to discuss? Writing. What about the writing? Because that's a big elephant with this for me.
Yes.
And its language use as well. Slow down, Speedy.
Yes. The alliteration just seems to like come out of nowhere. I was like, where the what? Were you just like one day waking up thinking, right, I need a tongue twister and Thomas and Friends, let's go for this. I mean, the writing itself, it was for its target audience, it's fine. It's what it is. For the more like kind of nuanced writers, like, like, I wouldn't say that I am, but definitely for you guys as content creators, like in fan media, there is a downgrade for Hero of the Rails. It does feel like in the overuse of narration, I think was down to the fact that they didn't have the confidence to let the story breathe on its own.
I think if they'd done this like as a movie, like had Michelangelo do his bit at the beginning and then at the end, it could have worked so much better. And also you would cut time off as well with this film being like, okay, scenes don't have all this narration bits we don't actually need, or even just do the scenes without narration, just like literally have stanzas through the beginning. Let the viewer interpret the visuals of what's happening without needing the narrator.
Let the visuals interpret the viewer.
I would love to see like a cut, like a fan cut, where they take all in the aside from, like you said, like the start and the end, take the rest of Evangelise's narrations out and see if it holds up. Because I think it would. I think sometimes you can say more by saying less.
Yeah, because it's like the fact the opening paragraph as well, because my friend sent me the transcript ages ago. Like it's literally the fact that it's like the sky was bright, the fields were full of flowers, and the birds sweetly sang. as Tom's filled water, he felt very happy. I'm like, we do not need rhymes.
Yeah.
Like, literally.
That particular set of rhyme, I think like that rhyme specifically was actually very good. I think it was kind of poetic, a charming kind of way of kind of introducing. So I think that opening segment, it works. It's more or less when it gets to the more dramatic stuff, then it kind of slows it down, like the chase with Spencer and Hero.
Yes.
But
because it's like with because with Thomas as well, the start is like with suddenly there was a whoosh and a whoosh and a clickety clack. There's a streak of silver rode by on the track.
Yeah,
that's all right. I think yeah,
I'm
kind of
so nostalgic for that, by the way.
Well, it's like there is bits and pieces that you're like, well, but sometimes the narration would work, but there's points where it definitely doesn't. Like you said, like the exciting incidents, like with the hero Spencer Thomas thing, you did not need any narration for that. Let the story tell itself. Let the characters say their parts, and let the other parts of media do its magic. The score, like the musical score. That was the whole reason why we loved Michael Donnell and Junior Campbell went back in the classic era. They told so much without needing to use a single word. It can make you run through your gambit of emotions, and that's what you needed. The narrator would undercut that emotion, and you would need that. That's the whole point of a story. You're meant to feel things.
Like it's the classic case, I think, of the concept being really, really good, but the presentation just like fell short. It's got this because honestly, this film has the scaffolding from like a concept perspective and the actual the concept perspective. This has the scaffolding of an amazing movie, and it is in some like instances. It is like it does have some amazing stuff in here.
Yes,
but like for the actual presentation of the story, the way they do it, and like it's all there in the pacing and the kind of how they go from A to B. It's just the dialogue in between that really drags it down.
yes,
And like that, and it's just that presentation and how like blandly they do it really is disappointing. But at the same time, I feel like this is I feel like this is one of the best we got out of Sharon. Some of the best we got out of Sharon Miller, ironically enough.
Yeah.
And because it's like could have been amazing is good enough compared to the other stuff Sharon Miller did.
Yeah, it felt like there was like a certain quota of words that Angeles had to say so he would get paid.
Regarding Angeles, when it came to like obviously I know we'll discuss this at a later point, but when it comes to certainly the start of this era, he sounded more alive than he had done during the models when he had to do everything. Because I think in the hit era he just sounded like he was done, like they were just dragging out his contract.
Yeah.
Whereas when you get to him now, where he's doing he's still doing a better work, but it's not as much as he had to. He sounds more alive, if I'm being honest. But like, I
think maybe the Brosnan incident gave him a fright. I think he genuinely thought he was out of a job and like, what am I going to do next? And then that fell through, and it's like, okay, I got to step my game up because they will replace me. If I don't start pulling my weight. But there's something that I do notice going forward is that it seems to be that he shouts more. It's like a case of like, I'll deliver more emotion by being louder.
But I think that's part of his. I think that's part of his shtick, though. I'd argue is Michelangelo's unnecessarily shouting, because like he just goes from really calm. Percy went up to Emily very calmly. Would you mind moving, please, Emily? Like that transition, I think, is part of his shtick, and it's what gave him a certain charm. It's like the whole thing. He's Liverpudlian, he's fairly loud. I think it's part of his charm. Is the shouting. I think that's kind of what you were saying. He could use that more when he was just doing the narration. And I think he did a good job. I think even though he was given way too many lines to say, I think he did a good job. I think he did a really good job.
I think by the time it got, because I think as well, what I noticed as well is by the time he got to season 16, when he done the Christmas Tree Express, which was obviously the last episode of that season, you would kind of tell in his voice that he was like, okay, this is it. This is my last story. So I'll leave you on a high note sort of thing. But like there was one point I noticed in the audio where his voice wavers a little bit towards the end of his last line in the episode, and I'm like, is he actually sad that he's leaving? Because if that was ever found out that he actually cried at the end of the narration, then I will literally be like, oh god.
I would say so.
Here on the
Yes.
Rails of Conversation. We'll be right back after these messages.
If I ever get a sponsor again, that's what I'll do. I think for starting to wind down with the review of Hero of the Rails, I'm going to do some quick fire things that I was thinking about while we were coming out and coming back in. Jack, we'll start with you. Best voiceover work in this special.
I'm sort of with you on this one. Is a hero. Who's the voice actor again? Sorry.
Togo Igawa.
It's a completely different movie when he's on screen. It's just in a good way. It's a completely different movie, and it's like this is like an insight into the movie it could be. It feels like, I'm gonna be honest, I feel his voice kind of reminds me of like something like a character from like Avatar: The Last Airbender, which has amazing voiceover work. And so it's like seeing something, comparing his voice to something from that is kind of a real testament to who he is as a voice actor, knowing that he kind of deserves. Well, obviously he did get a really big thing out of this. This is like one of his biggest roles, but I think it is like he deserves a much better story to go along with it. And I think it's kind of like the fact that he was able to show insights into that story is something which I've never been able to do as a voice actor. I've never been able to do as a voice actor, but it's something I strive to do. Is kind of not like obviously or like show how good a movie is, but to make that kind of impact is kind of what you strive for as a voice actor, and I think he did that for me in this movie.
Well, who would you say was the your least favorite?
Part of me wants to say Edward and Toby because of the characterization, but part of that comes into the characterization of the characters themselves and just how they've become wimps. And maybe that's part of the direction issue that they were given to kind of make them sound like wimps. I didn't like other contenders, Duke and Duchess of Boxford, because they were just, I think, just something about their tones just didn't really. I just kind of looked at, especially the Duke, and when they was speaking, I was like, you mean to believe that this person like owns this engine's ass effectively? Like he runs into him. Do you expect me to believe that this guy has the authority over Spencer effectively? Have you seen the stuff that he's done? And it's kind of like there was just not enough authority in that performance to kind of give me a sense of, okay, this guy owns him, like if anything. But like other words, human characters loved the Fat Controller. I think his voice, there's a reason his voice was also in the US dub later down the line, because his voice, that voice is just so perfect for him.
For the creating side of it, we're going to go to Thomas. What would you say was the best scene in Hero of the Rails?
I've got two from favorites actually. I think the scene where Thomas meets Hero, just because of the design of the forest, where it's made to kind of feel eerie, but at the same time feel mysterious more than anything else, I'll say. Because and then when we actually get that first shot of Hero, but with him in this like sort of livery that looks now worn and scrap worthy kind of thing. I think that scene visually is quite eye-catching, but also pleasing to an audience member. And the fact there was a nice use of greens and blues and everything else in that scene. But I think the chase as well, but that's mainly for dynamics more than anything else, because this film had a perfect blend, I think, of calm moments to them being like bang, which is kind of what you want in Thomas more than anything else, like where you'll have because seasons do that anyway. There's plenty of seasons where you could perfectly example where they have calm stories and then shoot up with episodes where they have that action, runaways, chases, stuff like that. Like, because honestly, I could have seen them doing this film after season 5, if I'm being really honest, because it was like it had a little. I think the reason why I enjoyed this film is because it was a bit of nostalgia for the 5th season, where it was like that mix of like cinematic, but also that mix of calm, neutral goodness that Thomas did used to provide. So yeah, if I have to be honest, it just designed a little bit of nostalgia if you're an older fan.
And if there was a scene or a particular instant that you had to cut from this movie, which one would it be?
I actually don't know, actually. That's a good question. I think I'd maybe have the beginning more than anything be a bit faster paced more than anything else, but I feel they took way too long to establish the story. Because like we don't see Hero for at least maybe 15, 20 minutes into the movie, and like he is the whole point of the movie. So if you maybe shortened down the beginning a bit, like say I've gone straight from that scene at Knapford to then actually having the Fat Controller come in and be like giving these jobs to the engines properly, you could have sped up the story so much, and also even gave maybe more insight to why Hero was left instead of just him being just abandoned more than anything
Yeah.
else. Because
Yeah,
you could have had a
that does make
reason maybe
sense.
why he was abandoned,
Mm.
something like that.
Is there any quick fire questions that you would like to ask me, since I've hit, both of you with two?
Okay, I've got an idea. Since you're like a big kind of reviewer and that kind of thing, and you're analyzing, because like you were kind of analyze what were kind of director's choices and what was kind of like actor's choice. Which director's choice for like the overall like film, something that was clearly the kind of direction that they went, which kind of direction do you think worked? It's like, do you think worked was like best, and which direction would you kind of take away from?
I think the one that I would specifically take out was the Percy and the mail train kind of segment of it. I felt like we didn't need to have that to be the kind of like, catalyst to get Thomas to tell first Percy about Hero and then eventually leading to telling the Steam Team about Hero. I felt like that was it was just an unnecessary plot device. And it was the whole because I just watched season 12 and just watched the Best Friends episode, it felt like they were doing more of the forcing this we're best friends trope of Thomas and Percy down your throat. But I felt like the confliction would have been much better if there was no kind of other things to add to it, where it was just a case of Thomas wants to tell the engines because he needs the help, but he's also torn because Hero was so worried about being scrapped. And I felt that was a bit jarring for me. I also think when it looked like Spencer was going to be discovered and it led to that chase, well, that scene was good. I felt Thomas was such a dumbass in that. He's pushing Hero to like run and push himself when he knows Hero is not ready. He can barely get up to steam, let alone anything else. It was just felt like it was just so we can add an exciting instant. The way Thomas was being portrayed at that point, he was actually more mature and more kind of level-headed. And then it's like, oh, let's get the hell out of here. Move fast. I can't move fast, you dumbass. But I'm telling you to move fast, so you will move. You can go faster. And you're just literally watching this engine that you've just invested all your time and energy and care into, literally ripping himself apart, just trying to keep up with that tank engine. It's like, come on, guys. Like, I get it for the exciting instant part of it, but it was such a dumb move. To have that, and it just felt like the progression that they were making with the movie, it kind of ironically stopped it in its tracks. And then it was like, okay, we're reverting back to this point, and now we have to think of another way to try and get them back up and ready to roll. And I was like, oh, really?
So I have to get my thoughts out here, but like I think one thing they should have done instead of so to kind of set that up is that with like obviously I know the kind of like whole Hero thing, but to kind of set that up a bit more, give Hero his first like test run. So he's not forced into it by Spencer discovering him, but Spencer Spencer discovers him in like a kind of jump scare kind of aspect where he just happens to kind of come across them doing the test run, and that's when they start kind of like trying to get away from Spencer to kind of that catalyst is kind of Hero's test run. Effectively, but they just get all panicked when they suddenly see
it was
Spencer.
a good idea. It was just the execution of it was a bit. It didn't feel true to how the story was going and how they were establishing Thomas as the character. He was seeming like the more mature kind of version of Thomas that we were used to. And it was like instantly, I'm now scared. I'm going to be a dumbass again.
Yeah. Okay. What about directional choice? What kind of directional choice did you like then? What was your favorite directional choice that we went with?
It's tied between the fact that Spencer was the villain, but I felt like a lot of times when Spencer's kind of being outsmarted, it felt very cheap Scooby-Doo-esque kind of like reveals where it's like, it wasn't me. It was like, thank you, that'll do. Well, off you go. It's like, and it's him that's just being made to look like a real dumbass, and it's like, oh, no one talks to me like that. I will get you for this. I will speak to this, and I will talk to this person. And I'm like, dude, when you're having these little hissy fits, it doesn't make me take you seriously as a villain. I'm liking when he is just being a straight up maniacal for the only reason of he wants to just make Thomas's life a living hell. I was like, I'm okay with that because there doesn't need to be any other motive for me. It was like he just wants to watch the world burn. Cool, Heath Ledger Joker style in a steam engine.
There was one thing I would have said as well with the going back to the chase as well, I think is like an interesting theory that I've seen, or I would even like to imply myself for the film. If Thomas, like say they finally started a place that works for Hero,
Mm.
because they obviously did at the end of the film, but like do that beforehand, but then it's like do similar to what the chase kind of did, except Hero's actually like on like Thomas and maybe Gordon or one of the stronger engines comes down and he's like a back engine for Thomas and whoever to take Hero to the steamworks. Obviously, he's a heavy load essentially, so like, but then have the chase in that way where it's like trying to protect the cargo, but then because the engines find out that Spencer's trying to obviously cause them to have an accident, basically so they can get rid of Hero, then have them sort of intervene and like try and keep Spencer off with this what are main routes that they have to take to the steamworks. So you could have kind of done like a sort of like a sort of a Lone Ranger style chase sort of thing.
Or I could have done something very similar to Escape. You know, the bit where you didn't see where Oliver was trying to get essentially across the border. So they're trying to find like it's like they know Sodor inside out. They're trying to find every back road to get Hero to this steamworks without Spencer or the Duke and Duchess catching this big ass engine.
Yeah.
And having it more
when he put it that way, you could have put it on the mainland. When you put it that way, you could have like Thomas like goes to, I don't know, Southampton or something like that, and has to get Hero, but like is constantly facing obstacles of like not of having to hide Hero when he gets there.
Yeah.
Just I mean, we don't know.
It would have been a bit of an Escape ripoff, though. I agree. It would have been a bit of an Escape ripoff.
Yeah, we kind of did do that joke in A Wish for Christmas as well with Ferguson.
Yeah, we did.
I think one of the good choices for me about this movie, which will go against when I've reviewed, for example, Calling All Engines and The Great Discovery, was that they kept the cast tight. Like, I love The Great Discovery because there were so many cameos, because it felt like this was the swan song of the model era. The cameos were just unreal, the amount of cameos. What Calling All Engines, I was like, why is it called Calling All Engines when we don't see all the engines?
All the engines.
Wow, it was like we just saw essentially Steam Team and maybe the occasional background shot of like Derek.
That still annoys me so much. You could have had Derek as being like the sort of happy demeanor between the engines and the diesels.
He is
because like
it's like both,
it was both of them way.
It was Derek's back. It was Derek's butt double. Like when Joey plays Al Pacino's butt double in Friends. It's Derek's butt double.
It's like, what happened, big guy? Big guy? It felt like a big guy moment.
Yeah.
But I will go against the grain with my previous ones because I felt like with this being a new, essentially it was being advertised as all new. The posters were all new CGI, all new voice cast, all new story. It's like an all new engines, you know, the two of them. And then you had Kevin, who was such an annoying prick. But
how dare you say that about me? I'm a good character.
I think he becomes a good character, but at this point he's just annoying as hell.
You know what? We're gonna sort this once and for all. Right, come on in.
They're just like, Kev, I love you.
Yeah, I was like, oh, Kev, you heard that?
Yeah, just all of a sudden, you just see me getting taken out by a crane hook. And I just hear,
oh, please make that an edit. Please make that an edit. That is an edit.
Just there, it's just the picture of the background and just Kev going, sorry, boss.
Nope.
Sip of the oak.
Yes.
That was that's it.
Oh, slip of the hook.
But the whole point was I like that they kept it to a core cast with this because it was being advertised as like, you know, essentially a fresh start. We needed something that if it was going to entice more people into the franchise, we go, you've got your core characters here. Here's a couple of newbies. One of them actually has some decent depth, and the villain's a bit of a douche nozzle, but he looks like Mallard. Well, and that's essentially it covered all the bases. What the less was more in this case.
Yeah.
Well, I personally think. And a lot of people who watch my channel will be like, but you love your cameos. And I'm like, there was still some. You saw like Diesel and Rosie in the Steamworks or whatever in the background. You saw Mavis coming up and like being like, oh, it's Spencer. Hello, I'm like creepy Rosie Stalker with you right now.
I feel like a cameos is what you put like in a cage to lure Andrew like the Roadrunner. You have the boulder prepared and you put on the side of the road. He just sees cameos. Beep beep, just goes down, start pecking it, and you prepare the boulder just to crush on him.
Yep,
that is his equivalent.
In this case, it would be like, you know, the trap would be Duke and Boko and I come along, and then I notice it's actually the boulder from Rusty and the Boulder, and go, I'm out, and off I go.
Yes.
And that's how the plan is foiled.
with the sign as well. Ow.
But just having that. But yeah, like those were the things that if people watch my channel, they will know me saying a lack of cameos is something that is like unheard of for me. But in this case, it was a less is more situation. Even the fact that there wasn't like there was an updated kind of intro music which they just used for the start and the end. It was the same thing. There wasn't like any kind of like over theatrics because we get to Messiah and all of a sudden there's like Hot and I Joe at the end. The way they done it, they kept it simple. Sadly with storyline as well, but with everything else, less was more. Having that kind of revamped to therefore their 6:38, a wee bit more orchestra style, shorter version of it, no singing. I personally would have been so happy if they kept using that for the Sharon Miller era. I know that they don't, but I liked that it was refreshing. Everything about it had that kind of like it was like a palate cleanser for me. Of we just had season 12, it was a dumpster fire. Here's Hero of the Rails. This is like the lemon sorbet of the Thomas universe. I'm ready for my next course. Season 13. Oh dear God, no.
Crap on a plate.
Just have that meme just playing the oh no.
Yeah.
Just Hero of the Rails.
For this
Things
evening,
are only
sir,
going to go
for
up
this
from
evening,
here.
For this evening, sir, we have a crepe souffle.
Well, I'm pretty sure that was why they had to bring Hero back in season 13 because it was just going down the crapper and it was like, we need a Hail Mary. Let's get a Hero Hail Mary.
I need a hero. Just the
that's what you need to
it's just
do.
in Propaganda. You just hear the dun 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 dun.
That's what you need to do for your channel because you do covers. Like do like a cover of I Need a Hero and just have that. Just all clips of Hero from season 13 onwards.
I mean, Thomas, you did do a cover instrumental once. To be fair, that could be it.
Oh, yep. This is why I love speaking to fellow Thomas fans. They just all get my humor. And everybody else be like, what the hell are you smoking, Andy?
Oh, you'd love Order Extravaganza then. It was basically that times 100.
I'm hoping either next year or the year after I'll get there, depending on how things go. But
just force the boys to come. They'll just be like, you have no choice. I need a child at this. Well, actually, to be fair, you don't even have to say the kids. Because literally there's so many people there without their kids.
Yeah, we just need to try and figure it out. We'll end with, ironically, the ending. So,
really? Is that what you end with?
With Hero going to head back home. And obviously it's a massive bait and switch because they did bring it back in season 13. But in terms of how they ended it, what were your thoughts on it? We'll go Jack for this.
I'm trying to remember how it ended. So it ends. It just ends with the kind of farewell of Hero.
Yeah, like
right?
he's fixed it. The steam works. Like he looks absolutely amazing, and it's a case of right. It's time for you to go home. He rolls down to the docks. Like all the engines are there. They essentially give him the chorus of whistle send off. It's like, well, I hope to see you soon. I hope maybe one day you can come to Japan. All that kind of stuff kind of spells off, and then that's it. And roll the credits.
Thomas. Just ends with that. But yeah, I'd say one thing I will say, I know how we talked about Spencer being a threatening villain, but I do kind of like the anti-climax of just a villain after like basically attempted murder, just saying sorry and it all being all right. Because it's one of my like it's a lot of people's pet peeves, but I actually really like it because the whole thing is like it's supposed to make you feel something, and I feel it's so funny to me. It's like after all that, you're just saying sorry and expect it to be all right, and it's so humorous to me. I love that.
Yeah,
especially considering it's just like, oh, this big threatening villain is like, oh, sorry, Sarah, sorry. Just the in-betweeners thing. Sorry. It just goes straight into that.
Is it too late now to say sorry?
Yeah, too late now to say sorry. It's like if Thanos, like after murdering half the population. Oh yeah, sorry about that, guys. Oh, by the way, I'm inevitable.
Essentially, he did kind of do that when he destroyed the stones to stop anybody else doing it. He looks at his daughter and goes, "Yeah, perhaps I treated you too harshly." As he's wiped out half the universe, he's like, his last words before he gets his head chopped off are essentially, "I'm sorry that I was a dick dad." And it's the same deal. It's like you just murdered an entire universe. Like 50% of it's just gone because you were deciding to do the Addams family.
But it's but yeah, I think the ending itself, it's sweet, it's simple and sweet. Like I said, okay, the ending, you don't have to do too much with it, just kind of a simple ending. And it's like, especially considering after all these characters went through, I think the way they did it with Hero going home, it's just like after all that guys went through, immense for him to go home. It's kind of screwed up though afterwards, because they can't make up his mind whether he comes or whether he goes.
Yeah.
It's
Is it bad
just,
that I kind of want to see someone do
Should
a
I stay or
should I go?
Should I stay or should I
should
go?
I
now?
go? Actually, can we go back? Okay. Oh no, wait, I want to go. Oh no, wait, I want to go back. Make up your damn minds.
Oh man, this is literally, it's like a how it should have ended.
Yes. I love this. I love the sweet ending. I like a sweet, simple ending.
Thomas, your thoughts?
I do like the endings. It's like it. Yes, we have covered it as anticlimactic, but at the same time, it's kind of like it's just again, it's just bittersweet more than anything else. But at the same time, I still disagree with how easily Spencer got let off, though. That's the thing. Like if this was classic Thomas, he would have literally have been having.
He would have been left in
Hail
the field
Marys.
somewhere,
Or he would have been left in the mud pit. Actually, to be fair.
I think he was left there for quite a while though, because it was like it's like, oh, we need to just focus on getting Hero fixed. Oh crap, Spencer's still there. Someone go get him.
Yeah.
I kind of wish they'd left that though. Like
Yeah.
I kind of wish they just forgot.
It just cuts to Ringo Starr, just the narration. But I think he deserved his punishment, don't you? And it just zooms in, dun 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 dun.
I would have had it like a post-credit scene. Well, and it's just Spencer still there. It's just like, little help.
Hello.
Can I get out? Excuse me. Can I get out of the mud now?
Is that so?
Yeah.
It's like, so you found them and you're just closing this line now.
It's just like
Yeah.
it just goes. It just there's lore just afterwards. Because like there are a few episodes still at that bridge, and every time there's an accident there, Spencer's just there to just laugh or just give a sarcastic comment. How does nobody realize at this point that this bridge is a death trap?
Yeah.
Oh man. Right. So if you had to give a grading out of 10 for Hero of the Rails, what would you give? And we'll start with Thomas.
I'd say for the first movie in the CGI era, and for something that was actually like not was actually still on the same par maybe as the Great Race, I'd say 8.5 out of 10. But it's mainly for the slow beginning and the end of Spencer getting let off too easily is why I'm downgrading it just a bit.
Jack?
I'm well, one thing for sure, it's a step up over season 12. But I think it's got the scaffolding of an amazing story, and what we got is a great story. Like I genuinely, not like story itself, like the writing and dialogue drag it down, but I think it should be like I think the actual pacing and the specific choices that they were kind of leaning into should really be appreciated. I think this is really Sharon Miller's expertise, was creating obviously not creating the specials, because obviously we had Misty Island Rescue and Day of the Diesels, but I think the actual set pieces themselves were masterfully crafted, and I think just creating dramatic set pieces and creating that sense of drama, it was kind of, this is an example of kind of what could have been. I think it's an example of what could have been in the CGI series, like some established perhaps lore that they could have created. But I think it's a really not only is it really just nostalgic movie for me, but it's also just, it's a movie that hits the right emotional beats and hits the right tone. So I'd give it a 7.5 to an 8 out of 10.
And in my case, I would say it was I think it's the case of it's the hope that kills you with this movie. Like you had hope that they were going to break away from type, and then it just comes and slaps you right in the face afterwards. But there were some great characters set up that wound up being kind of major players in the era going forward, and some people's favorite characters of all time and the entire franchise were set up in this movie. Well, again, like the dynamic with Spencer was also really good, really strong. But again, it was just like a whole case of, like, sorry, I was Ted Bundy. That's cool. 7.5 out of 10 for me. And we have covered Hero of the Rails in one of the very first kind of podcast style episodes for the Ginger Engine. So first of all, thank you both, Jack and Thomas, for coming on for this episode.
Pleasure.
And now this is when I would normally do, if it was That Metal Ginger Show, I would say sell, baby, sell.
Yeah, I am. I'm also, as I mentioned, name's Jack Cunningham, but on on YouTube, I'm known as Little Owl. I do reactions, covers, bunch of different stuff, whatever floats my boat. And so definitely give it give it a check and drop a sub. Definitely closing in on 2K subs. But thank you very much, Andrew, for having me. This is Little Owl out.
And hi guys, obviously as I mentioned, my name is Thomas Lawrence, but if you guys do want to have a look at my channel, I do loads of stuff for my own series called Thomas Reborn, which I feature these two amazing people in here. I almost swore them, but I managed to avoid it. But yeah, if you just want to check out my channel, I'm close to getting 1K subscribers. So if you want to see more of this mug, even though you probably won't, but you'll just hear the voice, then head on over to my channel.
And both links to the channels will be in the description of this video. Feel free to check them out after you have watched the video. So until next time, everybody, keep on chugging.